Welcome back, not only to a Celtic state of mind, but welcome back to Colin Watt. There you are, Colin. First appearance since April. You're like Lagerbjork. We don't see you for months and then you pop up.
I know, I think you're putting me in the shop window. I seen the Celtic Supporters podcast was on just there. I don't know if I'm open for a January transfer. What's going on, Paul? You just throwing me out there?
No, there's definitely not going to be a Bosman. Yesterday was good fun, Colin. You know all about the charity weekender. You've been part of Acsom since we started this. This is the fourth time we've done it. And yesterday, I was on it too much. That's probably from a viewer's perspective. They're probably sick of the sight of me. But today's been a slightly different day in that it was very much over to you guys, as in other platforms and other podcasts and shows. But yesterday was very interesting because we had the things like Kevin Graham's new band. Kevin Graham just doing his own thing, and he's got his own spoken words EP coming out, and it's a Henrik Larsson EP. And we're going to get the music to Henrik Larsson, just like we're going to get, or I think he already got his poetry book to him. Things like Shane McGowan tribute. We had Michael Targeton from the Foundation Supporters Committee. Jim doing his thing with Des McLean on the Bend It Like Bertie. And a guy that you introduced me to, I believe, Scott from SN Media, back in the day when you were doing Football Insomniac show. I thought Yato and Liam Carrigan talking about Celtic in Japanese for a whole hour was interesting.
Yeah, it just shows you how multicultural it's become.
Absolutely. And Laura Bradburn rejoined us for Thoughts on the Hoops, which is Laura's new show. We covered the game. I'm pretty sure we'll touch on that just now. And then before closing it off at night, my plan was to do a live auction. I do have a pile of signed items, but I think we'll do that maybe during the week because people want to talk about what's going wrong, how we're doing. But there was an interview. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it. Probably not after the game. Pierre Van Hooijdonk, George Cadet, John Collins, and they're all sitting there. And what I love about it, strangely, is that it's unedited, raw. Even the audio's not the right audio, but I didn't have time to edit it before it went out live yesterday, but I wanted it to be part of the charity weekender. So I just threw it out as a raw, unedited bit of film. It's like found footage, Colin. So, like, we're talking about other things in between takes and all that. But talking to the Bosman, I had a laugh with John Collins because he went to Monaco famously on a Bosman from Celtic. And he was, I think, at Everton, and Fergus McCann was still chasing for a transfer fee because he was trying to prove that it was a principality. Therefore, it wasn't part of the European Union, which meant we were due a transfer fee. We never did get that. Tony Cassidy enjoyed the interview. Thanks, Tony. And thanks for tuning in throughout the weekend. I've seen your comments popping up. Not all the contributors have had access to the buttons, unfortunately. So a lot of the comments haven't come through. But when I'm here and when Colin's here, we'll certainly be bringing up your thoughts. Colin, what do you want to talk about, mate?
Oh, I don't know. The weather's a bit rotten. It's close to Christmas. How's Santa? Is he coming to Fife this year? Sometimes he skips Fife.
You've opened up a discussion, Colin, on Santa Claus, right? So I took the wee guy. There's a thing. Anybody whose kids are into the Polar Express, and I know many of you will be sitting behind your screens nodding your head. There's
adults as well.
Was that?
I said adults as well.
Yeah, of course. I stopped at wearing pajamas though in public, Colin. I'm not doing that until I've picked the bairn up for school with my pajamas on. I'm not doing it. And there's this thing where you can go, and it's all over Britain, I believe, and from Edinburgh, you jump on a train. I think it takes you to Stirling and back, but it's an experience for the kids where they believe they're in the movie and all that. So we did all that. And I'm thinking to myself, we've seen Santa. That's enough for 1 year, I would suggest. But then for my birthday treat, Colin, and I'm not going to tell you my age because you thought I watched Jimmy McGrory.
I know it. That's cool. Bus pass coming in this year, yeah?
What's that, bud?
I said bus pass coming in this year, yeah?
Not far off it. So we get taken to another Christmas experience for my birthday. No complaints if the good lady is tuning in. And so I get to meet Santa for the second time this year. There's a point to this, by the way, in case you're wondering. I know you want to talk about Brendan, recruitment, January, whatever that was.
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Comes first. Yeah.
We'll get there. And the bold bearded one comes up to the wee guy, and he's got this wee, and it's not actually a hoopy hound, but he's basically taken the kit off a hoopy hound and put it onto a different Terry because he is now a Celtic player, of course. And Santa homes in on this, the Celtic thing. And I'm not sure, Colin, where he's going with it. And he's saying, all right, okay, what's your name? Blah, blah, blah. What's your address? All right, Dunfermline. So you're a Dunfermline fan then? And he gives me all this patter, right? And the Baron's like, no, I'm a Celtic fan. Right, what do you want for your Christmas? Now, it's just his birthday. He's just had a Celtic strip, blah, blah, blah. Barcelona strip. All right, you want a Barcelona strip, right? Did your dad let you stay up late last night? I'll make sure you get a Barcelona strip. And the Baron's like, no, puzzled. It's just that, Scotland's last remaining team in Europe were victorious last night. And honestly, I'm thinking to myself, Santa is a Rangers fan. Seriously. And he's trying to infiltrate my base. He's trying to ruin the spirit of Christmas. So, yeah.
I didn't know there was a bit of blue running through that red and white suit, but it makes sense when you look at it.
No far off it, mate. Not far off it. Anyway, now that I've got it out of my system, yesterday is probably a good time to do a week and a half time report card, Colin. You've not been on since April, so I haven't asked your thoughts on Ange leaving and Brendan coming in. Let's go right back to that moment. It's 3 days after the Scottish Cup final. Ange Postecoglou leaves the building. Loads of names linked to the club. You don't know how many of the links are genuine or paper talk, whatever. Who did you want in charge? Who did you want to come in?
I mean, it was a difficult one because you still held on to that bit of hope that Ange wasn't going to leave. I still thought at some point the whole Spurs thing was going to come back and it was going to be a case of, look, it's not happening. He's just, it's paper talk, it's this and that. But the more it went on, the more you were almost resigned to the fact that it was happening. And the fact that it overshadowed the build-up to the cup final. That cup final for me felt extremely flat. And that's a record-breaking treble, but you just knew at full time that was the end of an era. That was the era of Ange Postecoglou coming in, setting up this attacking, free-flowing, for the vast majority of the time, exciting style of football. And then it was just like, right, we actually don't have the structure in place to keep that going. So whoever was going to come in, unless it was someone who trains in the same philosophy, it was going to be a big change. And I don't think we were quite ready for that yet because, as I said way back when Ange took over, we are still in a rebuild phase. And that rebuild phase continues just now. And the problem we've got just now is with Brendan Rodgers, who I have to say, if you look at the candidates, was probably up there with some of the best that we could have brought in. He is a very good coach. He does have a lot of great experience. But his specific style of football and what he tries to do did not suit the players that were there in the squad at that point. So when you look at the recruitment and who we brought in the summer, it didn't. Nothing to me says that's a Brendan Rodgers guy. That's the kind of guy he'll want in that team. That's the guy that's going to come in and replace £30 million Jota. That's the guy that's going to come in and replace the centre half who was chasing Scott going over to Spain. There wasn't anybody in that list that you're going, that's the guy to take us to the next step.
Would you not have gone to Spain, no, Colin?
I mean, looking at the window right now and seeing the rain, I mean, I don't believe it lands in Spain. It only lands on the plane. So, yeah, most likely.
Wasn't talking about the weather. Anyway.
I know you weren't, but I just wanted to wind you up.
Change tact, yes.
But seriously, though, I mean, there was a great post put out there, I think, I think it was a Cynic posted it yesterday, or one of the other podcasts. I apologise for which one it was. But there was a list of all the players that we brought in since Mark Lawwell came in to become the head of transfer recruitment. Yeah.
Yep.
And there was one of them in the first team yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Well, two if you include, Johnston as well. But one that's permanently in there is Alistair Johnson. The other one, Lewis Palmer, still making his way in there. But the recruitment has been shambolic at best. There's guys sitting there on 3-4 year contracts. Guys like James McCarthy, who turned up for the B team yesterday, who unsurprisingly got beat again. They got beat again. This Lowland League experiment isn't working. It's just, I feel like we've took one step forward to go 2 steps backwards over the last couple of years, and it's going to look as if it's going to be another rebuild coming in again. Honestly, hand on heart, can anybody who's watching or yourself turn around and say there's any more than 4 or 5 players that started that game yesterday that you would have as a first strong Celtic team, a first strength strong Celtic team? There's not. we need massive improvements right across the board.
We do. There's 3 points from what you've said there, Colin, and you're talking plenty of sense. 3 points I want to pick up on. The first one, when I got sent that James McCarthy thing, I actually shared it with the Acsom group. I said, "Is this real?" And also, what are the rules? The reason that it kind of puzzled me a bit. What are the rules with us playing overage players in the B team?
So you can play someone over the age of 33. They're allowed one in the squad.
Over the age of 33, is it?
Yeah, and he is
All right.
33.
And that's the
So
first time we've done it. Would I be right in saying that?
yep. Yeah, there was times where Darren Adee, as being the B team manager, was registered to be playing in the squad, but was never kitted to play. So first time we've done it.
Okay. Now, the second point I was going to pick up. Well, what I'm going to say is, see where you're paying his wages. Get him in that team for 2 reasons, right? There's too many players in our squad, Colin, who are not playing football. Therefore, they're going to be unhappy. If they're a professional footballer, they're going to be unhappy at not playing games. And I take it right back to Benji Siegrist, right through to James McCarthy, right through to Kwon, just in from South Korea, not playing football. You're being brought in, you've been signed up by this football team, and you're not playing football. These guys are all going to be unhappy. That isn't healthy. So you either put them out on loan, or listen, they might not be happy playing in the fifth tier of Scottish football, but maybe you should see it as an opportunity to help develop the young guys coming through. I mean, they're going to learn from the experience of somebody like James McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say James McCarthy's become a joke figure. He's not. But he's become a figure that, for me, it epitomises everything that's wrong with our recruitment policy. And then you could take a player that probably like Matt O'Reilly, or Rio Atati, who would show you everything that's right with the recruitment policy. O'Reilly being a player that you bring in at a certain age, who, if you expose him to Champions League football and he's able to deal with that, then it optimises his value, and the club have already spoken about it. And it's the same with Rio Atati. You're going into, at the time, an untapped market for Celtic. We hadn't signed a player from Japanese football since Koke Mizuno, when we went in and we signed Kyogo, and then obviously the 3 January signings. So if that's the case, keep playing him there until he's off the books. That would be my first point.
The thing on that though, Paul, sorry, Paul, the thing on that though, we've had a couple of times this season that we've saw Celtic play testimonial games. I know you were speaking very closely with the one down in Ayr. I can't remember the player's name.
Michael Moffat.
Yep, there was one up in Fraserburgh. There's been a couple. There's one in Dundee as well, I think. Was it Cammy Cares, maybe?
That's right. Yeah.
And if you look at the players that we send to play in those games, that to me tells you who is totally out of the picture. And there's been guys like Lagerbielka that's been there. There's been guys like James McCarthy. Rocco Vata's obviously not coming into the first team for whatever reasons. But there's guys that you would think are first team squad members that are playing in those games. And it's not to give them minutes. It's because they're not wanted at the club. It is a way to sort of keep them active, but put them in the shop window.
Yeah, and I guess also if they're playing a game of football and there's a communication in amongst either agents or other football clubs that this player is going to be available come, let's say, January, it allows scouts to go and watch them playing, an actual 100%. Game of football, even though it's against opposition that wouldn't be described as top class. I think that there's definitely an issue there. I find it interesting, and I think it's right that Brendan Rodgers now sends a stronger team to play in these games. Ayr United, okay, it's a testimonial, but it allows you to play Kwon. I think Mikey Johnson played that day. Marco Tilio played.
The centre half as well.
Kobayashi.
Kobayashi, yeah.
Give them games. Now, Celtic will be getting invites all year round to play football games, be that charity, benefit, etc. Some of them will be at a better level than others. Take them on. Send that team out there, a hybrid of the B team players and these guys that are on the fringe, give them game time, match sharpness, that kind of thing. I think we should do it more often. You've also mentioned there about the amount of players in the team, and you were talking about, kind of like star guys that you're quite happy are included. I posed a similar question a couple of weeks back about what I called Champions League standard players. Mm-hmm. And I'll always have to back that up by saying not players that would win you the Champions League, Colin, or players who would play with. But you're happy that they're there. You think to yourself, I'm confident that Matt O'Reilly being an example, right? I'm confident that he can handle this level. I'm confident, regardless of his form, that Kyogo's in that group. He's not been utilised properly. He's off form. And it's a topic of discussion. If we had the answers, I'm sure he and Brendan Rodgers would have the answer for it. And the figure I've got from a squad of 32, Colin, I said 5 players. I said we've got 5. And I didn't include Alistair Johnston in that, simply because I didn't think he'd had a good campaign in the Champions League, although I do think that he played pretty well against Feyenoord in the second game at home. So arguably 6 players from our squad. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, right, I'm happy with him. That's just me. Now, my big concern will be, and I'm going to bring in a couple of these points that are coming in just to clarify something. Love it, yeah. The Celtic way, just to give you your schedule, is on at 3 o'clock, followed by the Green Sunrise podcast at 4, Come On the Hoops at 5, the Celtic Exchange at 6, and then the Unrestricted View at 7. So there's your structure for the day. Apologies, I did share it on social media, but I appreciate not everybody is on the old Twitter, etc. And thank you to everybody who is committing some donations to the Charity Weekender, because if you do it this weekend, every single penny that comes through our channel will go to wee Jamie Tierney's fund. So thank you very much to Feed the Bear, always supporting the channel, and Teeling 6 as well from Canada, $24.99.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. You're doing wonders for the Wee Boys family, and we'll get a final over the weekend, a total. We've also got David Reed, 60 MYR. I'm not sure what the currency is for that. Maybe, but thank you very much, David. I really appreciate it, and I know that the family do as well. And we've also got Craigie coming in. Thank you, every single one of you. You've chucked £10 into the pot as well, Craig. Thank you. And I've seen you coming up a couple of times this weekend, and it's appreciated. Brilliant weekend, despite the result yesterday. Thanks to every contributor to this worthy charity event. God bless. Yeah, I mean, Colin, if there's something we can do as a platform and as a community and as a fan base, a group of people that can come together, it's to make a difference at this time of the year. And I don't mean that in a cliched Christmas card kind of platitudinous way. It does work, and we're obviously helping wee Jamie Tierney this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And the initiatives that Acsom have done over the years have been incredible. It's just enlightening to see that there is certain fans out there that still remember what the club is all about, and it's the fans that realise it more than the people that are running the club at the moment. And that's a shift that has to happen, and fast.
No, you're right, and I know, right, that before I even get into it, the foundation do remarkable work, Colin. They do an incredible job. Yeah. They help so many people. I put out a wee video clip that it wasn't to antagonise anybody. I put out a wee video clip from our St Mary's fundraiser where we went back to the chapel, we went back to the birthplace, and we spoke to Canon Tom White about it. And I remember that day because he was so emotional. And this was sometime after I had first visited him, having heard of the plight of the church through the pandemic, whereby no one was able to go, and they were basically riddled with debt, and they needed a lot of repairs, and they couldn't switch their heating on. So you're going into this place, and it was so cold that you could see the cold air coming out your mouth, right? And we're sitting there huddled round with hot drinks and talking about what we as a platform can do for them. And at that time, Colin, I went back to the year before we were raised, I think it was 26,000 quid, and we split it up over 4 different charities. It was homeless charities, food banks, there was mental health in there, kids, underprivileged kids, got some toys at Christmas and stuff. So it was great that the Celtic fans done it. And I said, listen, we could do something similar, and with your link to Celtic Football Club, I'm sure you'll get a good response. And they did. So over the piece, it was over 30 grand that was donated to the chapel, and it saved them at that time. Celtic fans saved them at that time. They're still struggling. And I seen a picture of over in Rome when the Celtic squad and do we call them dignitaries? The Celtic squad and the board and all that, they all went to meet the Holy One. And when I looked at the picture, I thought, that's great. But I seen 2 organisations, and there's something wrong when the birthplace of Celtic, which is a Catholic church, can't pay their heating bill. There's something wrong when 2 organisations meet up and within that room two very powerful, two very rich organisations can't do anything to help the chapel.
There's a lot that we could be here for 6 hours talking about what I think about the board and everything else right now. And I think it's now starting to come out that the fans are starting to vent their anger at the board for the mismanagement of what they've done to the club over the last numerous amount of years. Well, I turned 30 this year, and it's been since I was in school when Celtic last won a knockout tie in Europe. It's a saddening reflection on where we are as a football club right now. And you look, we spoke about the list of players that were there, the 20 odd that had been brought in under Mark Lawwell, basically shopping in a bargain bin at a football supermarket, hoping he picks up the odd steak that's had a yellow label stick on it. That's the way
The
it's been
whoopsies.
going. Exactly, the whoopsies section. So whatever Celtic do to get themselves good PR, which obviously the trip to the Vatican did get them good PR, it, they can do well in that sense, but there's still so much they need to do to actually get to the root of reconnecting with the fans. And the fan base for me has never been the same since the COVID season. The connection between the fans and Celtic has never been the same. And there's still a lot of repair work that needs to be done there. I mean, you're speaking, for example, there about the church. Celtic are charging fans going to Dundee on Boxing Day £8 to print their ticket. To give them their ticket and post it out is £8. Now, having sent out a lot of merchandise, it doesn't cost £8 to send anything recorded delivery. So Celtic are going to be making money on that. So we worked it out. They're sending out 2,000 odd tickets at £8. They'll turn over £16,000 in that. What is that going to? That's not going to cover costs. So if you turn around and say that's a charity donation and they're going to put that towards the charities, maybe then you say, well, it's part of the Christmas appeal, and you don't feel ripped off as a client or as a fan, because that's the way that the club want to look at you, as a client. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a lack of sort of understanding of where it's acceptable to help and to donate, and where it's just a case of getting some good PR.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, there might come a point, because obviously, if you even look at the 4 charity weekenders we've done, Colin, the amount of people we've been involved with who have contributed. There's some people who are here every year. There's others who can't make it. So over the 4 years, we've got a big network of Celtic fan groups, platforms like our own, etc. And it could well be a case of just highlighting the fact to them, because St Mary's probably won't highlight the fact through a number of reasons, but highlighting the fact, and maybe once or twice a year having some kind of drive. I know the Green Brigade do the food bank drive, and everybody knows and expects it. And a couple of times a year we have a big drive so that all the groups inform all their members, and that can include supporters clubs as well. On their way to Celtic Park, go via St Mary's, drop the money in the tin, and that maybe it's as simple as that. It could be maybe once a year.
Paul, I honestly feel like going to Celtic Park nowadays, you're completing a slalom course to avoid the amount of dancing schools that's there collecting for themselves. And not once, I mean, if it's not dancing schools, it's Republican prisoners that people seem to be collecting money for outside Celtic Park. I don't see how Celtic can't just go out there and use the foundation, put the bibs on, say it's for St Mary's. One match day would be enough to raise that sort of money that was required, and what was raised amazingly over a weekend here on Acsom. You're thinking about a 55,000 fan base that you could reach doing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, you're right.
One game.
You're spot on. One game.
Give us a
game.
Need to be 20, what, 50 pence per person going to the game, and you'd have raised 25 grand.
Giza game. There you go. There's the name of the initiative. Giza game. And if you give us one game, we'll be able to save the chapel. Listen, we'll come back to that in 2024. Today, we're raising money for wee Jamie Tierney. Who is he? You might ask. Wee Jamie's a 4-year-old boy. I met his dad some time ago, actually, who told me about a condition that his laddie had, which is incurable. And it's heartbreaking, because if you can imagine any of your kids being hit with this rare disease whereby you can treat it, and the treatment obviously will slow things down, improve your quality of life for longer. But the treatment is not available in the UK. So you need to fly your kid all over the world at the cost of £60,000 a year just to keep the kid ticking over. So Jamie, his dad, senior, asked us for a wee bit of help. And every time we do an event, we raise something at the event. It's like you say, Colin, we had an event with a couple of hundred people in a room and we raised 3,000 quid in one event with 200 people in a room. So when we do some things like this, there's a chance to up it, and we're going to try our best and we're going to keep doing it. Simple as that. We are going to keep doing it. I'm going to go back to a point you made there about unhappy at the board, right? Anybody who's not a Celtic fan, and I've seen it on independent platforms, and they're saying, I remember on one really well-known one, they were like, is there a football club whose fan base goes on about the board more than Celtic? Probably not, right? And then they'll say, but look at the success, you're spoiled, you're entitled, you've only lost 2 games. Right, okay, I hear it. But let's go right back to Brendan Rodgers coming to the club first time round. There is a point to this, right? And you look at the 2016-17 Premiership, and we absolutely scooshed it. It was the invincible season, Colin. One of, if not the most memorable season in many Celtic fans, Celtic supporting life. 106 points, 106 goals. And our nearest challengers were 30 points behind us, right? And that was Brendan Rodgers' first season. So if you look at the league, and I'm not, by the way, diminishing the achievement of that, to go through an entire domestic calendar and not get beat is unbelievable. Celtic were competing against Aberdeen, who were the runners-up, Rangers, who were being probably assimilated to this level of football at that time. I think it was Mark Warburton would have been the manager at the time. Mm-hmm. St Johnstone, Hearts, Partick Thistle, Ross County, Kilmarnock, Motherwell, Dundee, Hamilton and Inverness, Cali Thistle. Who's missing? Right, because that's the top 12 clubs in Scotland at that time. I get it. Dundee United's not in that league. Hibs aren't in that league.
No,
that I'm not saying it was good, bad or indifferent. It's the 12 best clubs in Scottish football on merit. But that's the league that we won. That's the league that we won. I would argue that when you have a challenger, Colin, it is different. And in that season, I don't think Aberdeen were a genuine challenger. Every time we came up against them, we beat them. Be that a cup final, a league game, etc., etc. Now, if there's anybody out there who thinks, Rangers are still rubbish, they're garbage, they're this and they're that, that's fair enough. We're all entitled to the opinion. But if they win both their games in hand, which I know is not going to be possible before the 30th because it's going to be after that, then they're above you in the league if you maintain a status quo between now and then. So if they're garbage, so are we, right? So let's just take it for what it is and say we need to be better, Colin. We need to be better than the opposition.
The thing is, Paul, and you're saying that it's like other fan bases out there. It's the Celtic fan base as well. The Celtic fan base are as open as the critics. They come out and say, you're entitled, you're spoiled, you're this, you're that. Remember the 90s. That is the phrase that boils my blood more than anything else. Remember the 90s. Oh, we were terrible once, so we can never be terrible again. It's just not a way to look at things. If you continue to look outside and see sunshine and rainbows, that is great for you. I wish I was you. I wish I didn't feel so strongly about how I feel about Celtic Football Club right now. Because right now I'm totally I'm not interested. I walked out that game after 70 minutes yesterday. That is the earliest I've ever left a football game. I couldn't be bothered even going. I feel no connection to the club because they don't put the performances out on the park week after week. Those last 2 games have been shambolic at best. That's the first time we've lost back-to-back league games since 2013, I believe. So, see if we do come across as entitled and as spoiled, it's because we've set that standard. And I don't want that standard to slip. That standard was set of us winning title after title after title. That is because we should be the best football club in Scotland. And that's the standard I want to hit. It's the same as anybody that works in any sort of field. If you've put it to the point of, right, last year I made £100,000 in sales. If you dip under that the year later, you're not hitting the same standard that you've hit, and you'll be rightly judged on that. So the fact that Celtic's winning these titles, the fact that Celtic are continuing to beat these teams comfortably. That's the standard that we set. And when that standard slips, then people, the players, the staff, the management, the board, they have to be shown to try and work to improve to get back to that standard we've set. These teams that come out here on social media and say, oh, Celtic and Rangers fans, they're entitled and they're spoiled. They have never been at that level. So they're used to just turning up and maybe winning 10 to 15 games a season out of 38 game season. They've never had an invincible run. Would they kill for it? Would they switch with you if it meant their club could do the exact same? Of course they would. Of course they would. So when the standards are set at that level, I want them to maintain at that level. And when they don't, that's exactly what we've got to be doing. And we've got absolutely no excuse. This whole, oh, we're saving it for a rainy day. As somebody said in the comments earlier, it's raining outside. It's a rainy day now. We've got the chance to compete in a European stage next year, a brand new Champions League, which is a terrible name for a competition, by the way, considering I think 75% of the teams in it aren't champions, but that's neither here nor there. But you can get £60 million next year just for being in that competition. So having that £72 million or whatever it is now, because apparently we spent a big chunk of it in the summer, according to the board. Where are we investing in it? I think it was it not the Bonnet that said if I build it, they'll come. Put the team on the park, spend it, the money, invest in the squad, and you'll reap the rewards.
The reason I was bringing up that league campaign is it's so memorable, and it showed, I think, at that time, the manager and his capabilities, what he was able to do, and he was heralded as this man manager. And I've heard a few guys already this weekend saying, don't call him an elite coach. He's not an elite coach, etc. I'm not quite willing to write him off yet, Colin. And by the way, me and Kev Graham, we disagree on that, but that's fine. But the reason I brought that up is that was like his vintage campaign. And it was Jim Orr that said to me the other day that we dropped at this point of the season, during that campaign, we dropped 2 points. We had dropped 2 points at this point of that season. The following year, at this point, we had dropped 10 under Brendan. In his third season, which is the one that obviously everything fell to bits in about 2 months' time, we had dropped 12, and this season is the same. So we've dropped the same amount of points this campaign as we did in Brendan Rodgers' third season. You were saying something, and I'm not sure who this quote is, so apologies. I'm sure I could find out who said it. But there is a quote I quite like, and it's, if they know nothing of victory, they are at least spared the knowledge of defeat. Mm-hmm. And what that means is if all you know is defeat, how do you know what it's like to be disappointed by defeat? Because you've never attained the heights of working towards success. Now, if Celtic are a successful football team, that's not why I support them, Colin. Because, and I've said this about the podcast as well, people bang on about the Acsom thing and jumping on a bandwagon. This has been up and running for almost 7 years. And for 4 years, it cost me loads of money to just have it. You were there. You came to the studio. We were paying money to record things in studios, and loads of the guys are the same are out there on a podcast. So if it was to try and make money from Celtic, I'd have given up 5, 6, 7 years ago. Right? It's like with the Celtic books. I've written 4 Celtic books. Lost money on the first 3 of them. Not sure about the 4th one yet because it takes a while, but I lost money on it. If it was about money, I would have given up after the first one, Colin.
Paul, this is the thing. Guys like yourself, guys like me, Celtic were born into
exactly.
us. From when we were brought up, it was you remember your first game, you remember seeing them for the first time, you remember getting your first kit, you remember you've got the great stories of going to the games with your family and your friends, and the club to us, it's the thing. And me and my pals always make this joke. For those that don't like football, they don't understand what they've not got. Because football can consume you from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep. You can be thinking about it in your dreams. Football is a fantastic thing, right? But you just want to feel as if your football club, the one that you've chosen, the one that's, sometimes you don't choose it, sometimes it's chosen for you. In a lot of Celtic fans' cases, probably that through their fathers, their mothers, grannies, aunties, uncles.
Generations,
exactly instilled it within them. And right now, it's a case of they don't care. If it wasn't for the fans, there wouldn't be Celtic Football Club. That's the bottom line. And right now, what are the club doing that make us as a fan base go, these are the people to run our club? It's not there. It's just not there right now. I mean, from daft wee things, as I said, from charging £8 to post out a ticket for Boxing Day to the whole Green Brigade debacle, and I'm sure you've been through it many, many times, to silly other wee things like this game that's coming up in January against is Bucky Thistle, isn't it, in the cup?
You worried?
Yeah. How much? Well, who
Do
knows?
not clip that and use it in the future.
But how much are they going to charge for something like that? And I understand that there's a fine line between running a business and running a football club. But when you're listening to stuff that's coming out from the AGM and all you're hearing is, oh, it's a joke, it's penalty to Rangers. They're so far away from reality right now that we're a 21st century football club that's still being run by 20th century management. And it's the reason why teams like Copenhagen, PSV, all qualified for the last 16 in the Champions League. The Czech Republic has 3 teams left in European competitions this year. They'll probably leapfrog Scotland in the coefficient table.
Mm-hmm.
We should be a big European club. We are a big worldwide fan base, but a very small European club because of the way that we've been run.
Small-minded, you're right. And I know how much you love the club. You're right. I didn't choose to support Celtic. You know, it's one of the things that's been omnipresent in my life. But I had a rare occasion yesterday to speak to a pal of mine, Chaz Nuki Burden.
Yep.
He's an author, and he speaks my language. And what intrigues me about him is he did choose Celtic as his club, and he chose it based on the state of mind. He chose it on the history, the social conscience that the club's fans have got. I say the club's fans because you can say the club, and the foundation, the work that they do is phenomenal, and we'll always support it. But I do feel there's a disengagement, and I do feel that it's a bit fractured. Now, we can all have theories, we can theorise on it, and we can debate about it. Brendan Rodgers has come into this club for a second time. And there's some ghosts of Christmas past that he had to exercise. Absolutely, he did. And there was always going to be a section of the fan base, Colin, who wouldn't be happy with him coming back to Celtic. And I said early doors in the summer, I said the only thing to resolve that isn't an apology or any of that. It's success. Just win. If you win and you bring success to this football club, then you will definitely be accepted. Whether or not the same fans forgive him, I don't know. I just want him to be a success at Celtic because that means we as a football club are successful. And he went on about the recruitment. Now, I'm thinking of the presentation or the discussion that he was given in relation to how we recruit footballers. And I'm thinking because he pointed out, he said, in particular, some of the Japanese imports have been sensational. That was his exact words, Colin. So what has he been shown? Has it just been shown the successes? Has he just been shown Matt O'Reilly identified £1.5 million, MK Dons, look at him now, he's winning Man of the Match awards in the Champions League last season. This is a player that he has become. We found him. We've tapped into this Japanese market, and here are the successes. The successes are Dazi Maeda, Ryo Atati, Kyogo Furuhashi. What they're not showing you is the full picture, though. And the full picture is that since all that, we've employed somebody else. You know, since Juranovic, even Joe Hart, because let's not pretend he was a success in season 1 and 2. Giakoumakis, Starfelt, Moy. You know, Moy gets chucked into the Mark Lowell pile as a success. Ange Postecoglou identified Aaron Moy. Mark Lowell didn't identify him. Yeah, he might have been signed under his start date, if you like, Colin, but that's an Ange Postecoglou buy. You know, that's
they were connected for a long, long time before that.
Yeah, he knew him through the international game. So I think if I'm going to try and be as fair as I can, and it's not favouritism because I've backed Rodgers for day one, I'm not willing to die on a hill. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll admit it. I think it's too soon to say that he's not been a success. Things at the moment are pretty grim. But if Brendan Rodgers had been shown a recruitment structure and all the successes of that, because, you know, within the first 2 seasons, Colin, you could say, look at the successes we've got here. Why is Bernabe not playing? That's because Taylor's been playing so well. There's ways you could argue it out. Why is Kobayashi not playing? Because at that point, after 2 seasons, what's he played 3 or 4 games? That's because he can't displace Carter Vickers and he can't displace Starfelt. I didn't even mention Carter Vickers and Jota. So there's a way that when Brendan Rodgers comes to this club, you could sell him the dream that we are good at recruiting. It's not going to be a return to Ibu Kwasi and Bayo and Sved and Malumbu and etc. and a long list. And I think he's bought into it, Colin. I actually think he's bought into that.
But let's be honest, Paul, so did we.
No?
So did we as fans. We bought into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you saw the successes of the likes of Kyogo Furuhashi coming over, Daisen Maeda, Rio Hitati, as you say, Matt O'Reilly, guys like that, we're going, do you know what? We've actually got a finger out here. We're actually bringing in some really good players. Our structure's going out there. The Matt O'Reilly
Abada, and I've even mentioned Abada.
Yeah, Abada as well.
19-year-old, yeah.
And you look at it and you go, we wanted Riley McGree. Ange highlighted Riley McGree. That was the guy. We're bringing him in. And then at the last minute, things went south, or he went south. He went to Middlesbrough. God knows what happened to his career, but he's not playing in the Champions League. Matt O'Reilly was the second option. So it meant that we weren't just targeting the first target, we were targeting and had a very good backup option as well. Right now, where are we at? I mean, we're talking about it. You look at who came in the last few days of the window. Paulo Bernardo, Nat Phillips, Luis Palmer, guys like that. Were they the first choice? If they were the first choice, why did they take until the end of August to bring them in? If you go back to Ange Postecoglou's first season and you come to about this point, we are playing St Johnstone roughly about now, and we had Johnny Kenny playing up front. We had Lil Abada playing through the middle. We were struggling with injuries because the players were struggling to adapt to Ange's training style. So we knew that going into the game against Rangers, we needed reinforcements and we needed them quick. We brought in, I think it was on December 30th, it was confirmed that we'd signed Rio Hitati, Daisen Maeda, and Idiguchi as the 3. 2 of them came in and made an impact almost immediately. Mm-hmm. Rio Hitati, Daisen Maeda arguably changed the course of that season. That 3 or 4 week period between, I think they called the winter break early. We came back, we played Hibs, Daisen Maeda scored the goal. And then obviously Rio Hitati had that wonder goal against Rangers, and they also had one against Hearts as well. Those 2 players were pivotal in actually turning that season around. And it's almost coming back to the fact that that's exactly what we need right now.
Mm.
We need to come out. I mean, we've got 4 tough games coming up. We've got Dundee away, St Mirren away, we've got Rangers. And by the way, Livingston on Saturday will be a very tough game because Davy Martindale doesn't play football. If you look at the team he puts out there, it's all big.
And they're fighting for their lives.
And we're going to need to try and break through that.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to get through these 4 games and then comes the January break. We need somebody that's actually going to put the team on their shoulders and carry them through it. And when it comes to the January window opening, we need guys that can come in right away. So if the deals are to be done in January, start doing them now and give them the chance to come over, because who knows who's going to go to the Asian Cup, whether Maeda will be fit enough, Kyogo will he still be picked on his form. The Japanese manager seems to kind of decide when he likes him and when he doesn't. Rio Hitati obviously came back. Will he be able to go? You've got O, you've got Yang potentially. You could be losing a lot of players to that. So who's going to come in and step up and put the team on their shoulders and actually carry us through that difficult period?
Listen, Colin, you make a great point. And I think to finish off my, as I say, theorising over the recruitment and why it's gone so awry is that, yeah, we went through a spell where we had far more hits than misses. And it's kind of like what you said, we had to that season. There was no room for error. There was so fine margins with regards to you buy a player who's going in that first team and he needs to make an impact. Thankfully, for the best part, they did. Carter Vickers, Starfelt, Jota, Abada. You moved, Juranovic, Giacomakis. You move into the four you mentioned. Only one of them didn't kick on. And by the way, apparently the Vissel Kobe are interested in taking him permanently at Edeguchi.
We became, what was it, Player of the Year in Japan last year on loan.
In Japan, yeah. And Joe Hart, I mean, let's not forget Joe Hart. One of the most troublesome positions we had at that time was in goals. We had three goalkeepers, who were in and out in Neil Lennon's final season. And it was Connor Hazard, Scott Bain, and your man Barkas. We didn't have a goalie. And we had to bring somebody like Joe Hart in. So all these guys all worked. And that's the recruitment, I believe, that Brendan's been shown. Look at how good we are at bringing players in. But what hasn't probably been realised at that point is that the recruitment has actually changed since then. There has been a change in structure and someone else is the head of that team. And the record hasn't really been that great since then. There's a few. Like you say, there's a list kicking about now, and one or two of them are in the first team.
And do you know what, Paul? That's the worrying thing going into this January transfer market, because
it's the same guy.
I listened to the end of the last show, the Celtic Supporters podcast, and the guys were talking about, right, well, we get into the January window and notoriously it's difficult. I think that's such a big football cliche. January is the most difficult time to bring in players and stuff like that. If you look through it, big teams get the right players in January. They get the right players in, and it's about time that Celtic started doing that as well. For me, this window, you've got to look at least bringing in a goalkeeper, a left back, potentially another centre back if we're going to get rid of the two that we brought in the summer, which to me is ludicrous. I think you need another centre midfielder. You need at least one winger and another striker. That's 5 or 6 players now. That sounds impossible to try and do in January, but that's the position that this poor recruitment's left us in.
If you want to win the league, that's where we are. And the thing is, Colin, and what I'm saying here, I'm not saying he's been sold a dummy, but if somebody asks you to present something to them, be that a recruitment structure, your podcast, whatever it is, you're not going to show them all the bad bits, right? All the failures. Yeah. And I think what's happened is there's also been an element of Brendan who's maybe thought, oh, that's brilliant. I don't really have to have that level of involvement, that level of laser focus on the recruitment, because I can trust they guys are going to produce me a Kyogo and an Abada and a Matt O'Reilly, and I can work with them and I can develop them. And I think that's when that quote happened, when he says, I will develop the players I'm presented with, because at that time, I actually believe he felt that the quality of recruitment would have been good enough. But he's now looking at guys like Lagerbielke, and if the last 7 days has told us anything, he doesn't rate him. He doesn't think he's good enough.
No, and do you know what? There is obviously a list of players he wants to get rid of, and you can hear when he talks about these players, who he's going to get rid of. I mean, it's very obvious. He doesn't rate Lagerbielke. He doesn't rate Mikey Johnston. There's a couple others that he doesn't.
Where are we with Naroski? I know that he's been injured, Colin, but I mean that 4.3 million quid.
Rodgers came out last week and says he's not doing enough in training. So he's fit. He's fit. I mean, there you go. Wednesday night, we seem to play spin the roulette wheel when we come to picking a team for European football. Bernardo's barely kicked a ball in the league. I think he played almost every single European game, if not all of them. Maybe that was part of his contract when he came here on loan. Stephen Welsh brought in out of the blue, straight off the couch into the back four. Looked all right, but no wonder he's rusty. Nat Phillips has been mistake after mistake after mistake. He is the 2023 Shane Duffy, and he puts him in there. Young Mitchell Frame, now 17 years old, fair enough, wasn't even on the bench yesterday after coming on against Feyenoord. At the point where we're trying to win that game, we're turning to a 17-year-old and asking him to do something, and now he wasn't even good enough to be on the bench at the weekend. I swear, Paul, he just spins the wheel, and you're in my team, you're on the bench. Oh no, you didn't make it. Sorry. There's
the random nature.
The
random nature of things like Bernabei and Kwon returning to the bench, and Phillips disappearing, Lagerbielke scoring the winning goal, then disappearing. But I think again, these are the things that you can only surmise about. You really can. I mean, you and I could have a discussion about who did Brendan buy first time round, who did identify, who was down to a recruitment team, who was down to preferred agents. There's no way he had anything to do with Sped because he confirmed it in an interview just before he resigned. There's no way he had anything to do with Compare, otherwise he'd have played more than one game against Greenock Morton. And I'm now looking at the 9, and he's clearly not had a part to play in many. I'm not going to say any, many. And the reason I'm not going to say any, I think Brendan's had a part to play in Nat Phillips coming to the club.
Yeah, of course he did, because he's got that connection to Liverpool from when he was there. Nat Phillips is what, 26, 27 now? So there's every chance he was kicking around the first team when Brendan Rodgers was there. He'd have been about 17, 18 at the time.
But if we can't trust Brendan to pick a player, and we can't trust the recruitment team to pick a player, Colin, that's a worry.
Yeah, I get that, and that is frightening. But you're at the stage now, Paul, where you've invested so much into Brendan Rodgers. You've went out on a whim to bring someone who was a very
expensive manager we've ever had.
He was a very divisive figure across the fan base. Still continues to be so to this day. I think he was at the stage of starting to work quite a few fans round. You're now at the position where, what do? Do you go out in January and you back him and you throw £20 million and hope that you're able to turn this scenario around? Do you cut your losses? Then you're going to need to try and bring someone in. I've seen a couple of people in the comment section saying guys like Neto Knudsen are out of contract in a couple of weeks' time when the Bodo season finishes. Do you then go, right, we're kind of writing off this season, we're bringing a new manager in, he's going to have 3 weeks to bring in some of his own players, but he's going to have to develop who else is here already. You're in a real catch-22 situation, because you've came down this road. If we go back to the COVID season, and I hate it because Neil Lennon, for what he'd done as a footballer at Celtic Football Club, was incredible. What he'd done in his first time round as manager was very impressive as well. Second time round, he was miles out of his depth, and we continued to let that go on. The incompetence of the club continued to let that go on, and that's the reason we lost 10 in a row. And what happened since and how he treated fans after that, I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive him, and I know that doesn't sit well with a lot of fans, but everyone's entitled to their opinion. But we're in a situation just now where, as you say, all going well, and we win these 4 games. Doesn't matter about the game in hands they'll have. We'll still be ahead. That gap should have been a hell of a lot bigger than what it is right now. And it's down to us. Do you stick a twist? And that'll be the big decisive thing. Depending on the actions of the board this January, you're either going to see jubilation or I dread to think what the scenes will be like in May, because Brendan said to us, "Come back in May and see what happens then." It's either going to be happy, or it's going to be sad, and it's going to be angry.
He said, "Come back May," and yesterday he said, "I'm judged after results like that," and that's why we're talking about it. I'm going to stick my neck on the line and say you stick with Brendan Rodgers, but January, yeah, I've heard it all. I've heard that you can't do this in January, you can't do that in January. I'll tell you what, if you don't, then you are staring down the barrel of a gun. So you've got to make it happen. Regardless, you've got to make it happen. Joseph McGonigal, for the wee man, thank you very much for your donation. It's greatly appreciated. If everybody is able to help, not only by putting money in the pot, you can share the word, share it on social media. Every time you see it, just like, share. That's a way of helping us out here. David Reid again. MYR, again, not sure of the currency, but thank you. In any case, it'll all go to the same cause. I'm going to say about Brendan, here's the DJ of choice. The board are not sacking Rodgers. Get out of cloud cuckoo land, because a lot of people in here are saying that they should. Terence Pratt is saying, we will lose the league if we continue with Brendan. I'll tell you something, if we sack the manager at this stage, you can, as Colin says, write off the rest of the season as far as I'm concerned. I think that the upheaval of changing a manager mid-season doesn't work.
I tell you what, there's a great point here, Paul. I don't know if you can bring it up from Craig A. And I think it sums up where we are right now as a club. I don't know if you're able to get that.
Does it start? I hate being negative.
Yeah, I hate being negative. Hate being negative, but the manager and the board are causing a divide. The GB locked out, players off form. We need to unite as a club and prove we're worthy of this league victory. And that Paul, sums up exactly where we are right now, because the fans are disengaged. The players yesterday looked disengaged. They'd already switched off. Come 65 minutes yesterday, they'd already accepted defeat. The fans started the chants against the board. The chants directed specifically to Lawwell as well. And you see the split that we've got in this, even in this chat just now, of where we are as a football club. You go on the boards, you go on Acsom, on the Facebook group and everything else, you can see there's a massive divide. And the only way that we are a top tier football club is when every single asset of Celtic is clicking.
The Holy
The
Trinity.
players come together, exactly. Yep. The players, the fans, the board, when everybody's on side, that's when Celtic are at their strongest. And right now, there's a massive crack right in the middle of all three of them. And it's not that it's not helping matters, and everyone's, like myself, entitled to their own opinions, but something has to be done. And at the end of the day, it comes back to one man in particular. And that one man is sitting probably on a golf course in Ireland right now, letting his son run the business, Dermot Desmond. And you've got to look at it and say, this is his toy, this is his baby, the football club. He is the majority shareholder. What do you want out of this? Are you a fan? If you're a true fan, then you have to come in January and try to resolve these issues and get everything firing again. If you're a businessman, then you're losing out on the £60 million in the Champions League next year. So there's two reasons why you would come over in January. If he doesn't have any input in January, you look at the last time he properly came in the January window, we brought in guys like Robbie Keane. You've got to try and do something, because I reckon if this continues the way it goes, and I'm starting to see it going to games, there's more spare tickets coming available. Games like Wednesday night where no one ever wanted to go. And then you're going to be sit with a situation where could the banners one day eventually come back out over that North Tier? Well, and it's not as drastic as that just now, but that's how bad it did once get.
It did.
And that should be a warning sign to people.
I'm going to bring up a few things. I've never seen you as disengaged as this, Colin, since the pandemic season when we were playing AC Milan that night. And you're like, I'm going for a walk. I'm just going to go for a walk tonight. You know, you were just like, this is absolute torture. And obviously, I think we all felt the same about going for a walk, because that was like one of the only pleasures you could get during that time. But the other thing I was going to say there is, you're talking about Dermot Desmond, and you're right. But if Brendan Rodgers is Dermot Desmond's man, and again, we've got to surmise this. We know that he came over. There's that famous picture of him, Ange Postecoglou, and Ros Desmond in the foyer, the entrance. We now know that Ange's mind had already been made up at that point, and we had to go elsewhere and find a replacement for him eventually. If he is Dermot Desmond's man, and Dermot Desmond's is never there, day to day, he's not got the involvement day to day that football club. I mean, he's no phoning it in, is he? Every morning and doing dial-ins and making sure everything's ticking along, is he? Because there's other people who are paid big money to do that.
I tell you what, Paul, I know we're kind of running out of time, but tell me another majority owner in Scotland that does that. There's not one. Not one. You see guys like Dave Cormack at Aberdeen, Roy McGregor at Ross County, even across the city, you see that their board are active every single day. Ours just deals with it from afar.
Yeah, and the board, I've already spoken about the complacency, the lack of diversity of ideas. There's a stagnation when you've got two board members who have got the accumulation of 40 years service at Celtic. I mean, what you're bringing to the table. So there's all these ideas within the club that have to change. But in the here and now, things that need to actually get dealt with is what's happening on the park to save the season. So that's almost like on a temporary basis. Let's sort out what's on the park. Let's make sure that we give the quality to the manager that he requires. Are you convinced we can do that with the recruitment team that we have? I'm not 100% convinced. Let us know in the comment section. Colin, what? First appearance since April. I thought you were going to go for an entire year, but you're back, and it's great to see you.
Tell you what, it would have been nicer and to be happy and to be upbeat. We could have been in a cup final today. It could have been great
Come back in
fun,
May and
but
we'll do it.
yeah, for the double. But no, look, it's great to see some of the characters that have been supporting Acsom for all this time. I believe what we at just now for the fund for Jamie?
It's nearing a couple of grand over the weekend, and we've still got a charity auction and all that kind of stuff to do as well. But over the year, we also have live events that we do. We've got one tomorrow night with Johan Mjalby, and we've been raising funds throughout the year as well. So
Yeah,
I think
it's incredible, Paul. I'm delighted to be a part of this. I think us as Celtic fans really do understand the true meaning of charity and the true meaning of togetherness, and especially at this time of year when people's pockets are stretched thin with Christmas just round the corner and everything else. Every penny that you can give is very much appreciated. Continue to support Acsom. I know we're not far off 25,000 subscribers. And yeah, Paul, you do an incredible job. And to everyone who has had the nice words to say, thanks very much. And Simon Fideni, it's Slice, and I had a couple of roses.
I've got the rolls and slice. Listen, get back onto the YouTube channel. Next up, another old face from the Acsom days. It's Tony Haggerty with the Celtic Way. And I will see you hopefully later on tonight, actually, on another show. But it's Tony Haggerty in the Celtic Way over on the YouTube channel. Thanks for supporting the Celtic State of Mind, and we'll see you very, very soon.